This is the story of the man with the highest level of radiation ever experienced by a human. Doctors were shocked when Hisashi Ouchi arrived at the University of Tokyo Hospital after being exposed to astronomically high levels of radiation. The 35-year-old technician at a nuclear power plant had nearly no white blood cells, which meant that he had no immune system. He will soon start gouging blood as his flesh melted. At the nuclear power facility in Tokaimura, Japan, the nuclear disaster started before noon on September 30th, 1999. The Japan Nuclear Fuel Conversion Company ordered Ouchi and 2 other employees to mix a new batch of fuel despite an outrageous lack of safety precautions and an abundance of dangerous shortcuts. For use in nuclear energy, the plant transformed uranium hexafluoride into enriched uranium. Usually, this was accomplished via a methodical multi-step process that involved combining a number of components in a precise order. In an effort to speed up the process, officials started testing in 1999 to determine if some of these stages could be skipped. However, it had resulted in them missing a deadline for producing fuel on September 28th. So, on September 30th at 10 a.m., Hisashi Ouchi, Masato Shinohara, and Yutaka Yokokawa, their 54-year-old boss, tried a shortcut. However, none of them knew what they were doing. They used their hands to pour 35 pounds of nitric acid into a steel bucket, instead of using mechanical pumps to combine the recommended 5.3 pounds of enriched uranium with it in a designated vessel. The uranium hit its critical mass point at 10:35 a.m. The room exploded with a blue light, signaling the occurrence of a nuclear chain reaction and the release of fatal radiation. The evacuation of the plant and the nearby villages was still in progress as Hisashi Ouchi began his extraordinary ordeal. Hisashi and his co-workers were transported to the National Institute of Radiological Sciences in Chiba as the plant was evacuated. They were all in close proximity to the fuel, thus, they were all immediately exposed to the radiation, although to different degrees. Radiation exposure of more than 7 sieverts is regarded as lethal. The only member of the team to survive was the supervisor, Yutaka Yokokawa, who had been exposed to 3. Hisashi Ouchi, who was standing directly over the steel bucket, was exposed to 17 sieverts, compared to Masato Shinohara's 10 sieverts. The greatest radiation exposure ever suffered by a human was experienced by Hisashi Ouchi. He was in excruciating discomfort and was having trouble breathing. He was already violently throwing up and unconscious when he got to the hospital. Hisashi Ouchi was completely covered in radiation burns and his eyes were gouging blood. The worst part was that he had no white blood cells and no immune systems. Doctors evaluated the damage to his internal organs before putting him in a special ward to prevent infection. He was moved to the University of Tokyo Hospital 3 days later, where cutting-edge stem cell treatment was tried out. Countless skin grafts and blood transfusions were performed on Ouchi during his first week in intensive care. Hisamura Hirai, a cell transplant expert, then proposed a cutting-edge strategy that had never been used on radiation sufferers before: stem cell transplant. This will quickly revive Ouchi's capacity to produce fresh blood. Hisashi Ouchi's chromosomes, however, were utterly devastated, as seen in photographs. The inserted cells were eliminated by the massive amount of radiation circulating through his blood. Images of Hisashi Ouchi demonstrated that the inability of his DNA to reconstruct itself prevented the skin transplant from holding. "I can't take it anymore, I am not a guinea pig," cried Hisashi Ouchi at some point. Even though his body was not tolerating the treatment and his skin was starting to melt off, the physicians continued their experimental treatment as per Hisashi's family's demand. After then, on day 59 of his hospital stay, Hisashi suffered a heart attack, but his family agreed that in the event of his passing, he should be revived, so the physicians did so. In the end, he will have 3 heart attacks in a single hour. Hisashi Ouichi's fate had been predetermined for some time, with his DNA destroyed and his brain damage getting worse with each passing heart attack. It wasn't until a merciful final cardiac arrest brought on by multiple organ failure, which occurred on December 21st, 1999, that Hisashi Ouchi was finally allowed the freedom from the suffering he wanted so much, after 83 long days. Thank you for watching. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe button, and don't forget to watch my next video for more content like this.